Hello everyone, Marco Montemagno here, founder of Super Summit. Is the final presentation of SME's Mobile Strategies 2014. I'm a little bit sad, but I'm very happy on the other side because this online event went very good. A lot of interactions, a lot of people, a lot of great speakers. So very happy about it. And here with me, Krista McLandres for this final chat. Hi Krista, how are you doing?
Hey Marco, I'm doing really well, but like you said, I'm sad too. I'm sad it's all coming to an end.
But a little bit tired too, I have to be honest, because after 1 week, you start to be a little bit tired, but okay, still fighting for 1 hour. And the final speaker, who better than Dan Spicer from Hootsuite? Hi Dan, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you have a big responsibility here, Dan, because you have the final presentation. So the final moment is the only moment of the event that people will remind. So if you're doing great, people say, oh, wow, that was a great event. If you not so, then people say, well, that online event was not so great. So there's a big pressure that I'm trying to put on you.
No pressure then, thank you. Thanks for that.
But you're very good to handle it. That's the reason. So what we'll talk about then?
So we're going to take a look today at kind of the social media and mobile landscape. I'm going to talk about kind of where we were a couple of years ago, how we got to where we are today, and then hopefully I'm going to leave the audience with some tangible, kind of actionable tips they can take away from today, something they can implement into their kind of social media strategies now, rather than kind to try and bombard you with all these tips. I've broken it down into 3 tips, so hopefully there's 3 tangible things you can take away.
Fantastic, fantastic. And to people that, if someone is not familiar with Hootsuite, obviously that's a little bit embarrassing, but it could be, So we want to say just in 30 seconds what is Hootsuite all about.
Yeah, so Hootsuite is the world's most widely used social relationship platform. So what that effectively means is we allow our customers, our clients, to manage and execute all of their social media strategies through one web-based and mobile dashboard. So we integrate the 4 main native platforms: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn and Google+, and we also have about 130 apps now that you can integrate into the dashboard. So Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, CRM platforms like Salesforce, customer support, customer service platforms like Zendesk, as well as kind of workflow tools like Google Mail, Google Drive, Dropbox, and Box. So you can integrate all of those into one broader ecosystem, which is a web-based and a mobile dashboard.
Can you imagine that that after our latest chat about social media during Social Media Day, you were talking about a Hootsuite feature where you could target a tweet only for a certain country, okay? And I've started using it. So after that, I was, immediately using that feature, and I would say it's very good. I don't know if it works. That's the only time that I have. I don't know if only people in Italy see my Italian tweets or everyone. I didn't understand yet, but if it works, it's great, because I can target Italy with my Italian and without bothering all my international friends and the other way around. So I hope it works, but just to tell you that when you say something, I'm going to do it. So
great, fantastic. Well,
today, I'll follow you.
Twitter and Facebook are working the way they should do. Your Italian audiences should be, your only Italian audiences should be seeing those Italian tweets. I'll let you know on your Twitter profile if I'm seeing anything in Italian.
Okay.
Also, actually, I've got part of the presentation today, I delve a little bit deeper into that and the context behind that and the reasoning why you should be doing kind of location-based content. So I'll touch upon that today as well and go into a little bit more depth around that.
Fantastic, fantastic. So let's start then, and again we will just fire to you a few questions when they come on, when it's the right moment. Yeah, so I'm very curious about. No, seriously, it was not a joke. I mean, when you say that thing, for me it was really a pain because maybe there are other companies out there. They have an audience in several countries, and when you tweet or write something, you don't want to bother in I don't know, in Spanish your German audience. So you need to find a way, and that kind of feature of Hootsuite was amazing for me. So just to
exactly. Great. I've shared my screen. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, perfectly.
Fantastic. So I'll kick off then. So see, I've given a little bit of background to Hootsuite. Just a kind of slight background to myself for those listening who I haven't spoken to previously. I lead the community management team and community team here in EMEA. So what that effectively means is I help grow, manage, and nurture our communities across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We have 10 million users worldwide, around 3 million in Europe. And effectively, we have about a social presence in about 30 regions. So you mentioned, of course, of the multilingual aspect of targeting content, and that's exactly kind of what I do and my team does on a daily basis. So today I'll talk you through some of those best practices and what we've learned using mobile and social and a bit of background to that. So just to kick off with a little bit of intro to kind of the mobile landscape at the moment, if we take a look at the social media landscape today, nearly 2/3 of global active social networkers access their respective platforms through mobile devices. So 71% of people access social media through mobile, a significant number, and something really not to turn the noses at. These are smartphone and tablets that they're accessing through. That's a global figure. In Europe, that's slightly less at 66%, but that still equates to 190 million mobile devices accessing social media. So we see a very significant number, and exactly why we're here today having this conversation. If we look at the UK specifically, the growth in social networking really has been supported by the kind of the proliferation of mobile devices. So we're currently at 130% mobile penetrations, equaling about 82 million mobiles in the UK. Although technically that doesn't make sense for those of you working with numbers, what it does indicate is that more and more people actually have more than 2 mobile devices now, one for work and one for personal use. So obviously that's kind of where we're seeing the increase in social media too, is we see mobile devices now are overtaking desktop usage and PC usage more generally. If we break that down to kind of platforms specifically, if we take a look at the world's most popular social network, Facebook, actually, Facebook released their Q2 figures earlier in the week or last week, and actually now have 829 million daily active users on the platform. 892 million daily active users, and of those, 654 million are mobile daily active users. So that actually equates to 83% of their daily users access the platform through mobile devices. Actually, 50%, if we break that down, 50% of the mobile active users access Facebook through mobile only. So they never actually use desktop PCs, and that number really is only going to increase. So Facebook users were once all desktop users. Now there's more use it on mobile platforms than PC. And in the UK specifically, if we look at the UK, Facebook is undergoing a mobile revolution with 4 out of 5 of the 24 million Britons who log on each day using smartphones or tablets to kind of satisfy their social appetite. Just quickly on the mobile, on the Facebook earnings, actually they released their figures, as I mentioned, earlier in the week. And for the first time, I believe, mobile ad revenue surpassed desktop revenue in Q2, driven by mobile commerce. And as a whole, that's an industry expected to generate 500 billion in revenue by 2017. And mobile advertising actually accounted for 62% of their total ad revenue. So you can see the running theme here. Obviously, it's SME Mobile Strategies Week. So everything here is kind of lending itself to really understanding the power of mobile and understanding social and mobile and how your strategies can work together. If we look at Twitter, second most popular social network in the UK, 76% of Twitter users access the platform through mobile devices, and actually 79% of total users actually access Twitter more than once a day. So that's 80% of people access Twitter more than once a day, and 76% of those accessing through mobile devices. So again, some incredible figures in terms of mobile usage. And then finally, if we just take a look at some of the other platforms to focus on some of the top ones, see mobile is a running trend across all of them. So mobile page views on LinkedIn year on year are up 250% from last year. 40% of YouTube videos now play through mobile devices rather than desktop. And even Pinterest, actually. Pinterest content is actually shared 3 times more often on mobile than desktop. sort of majority of the sharing comes through mobile devices on Pinterest, and mobile Pinterest usage actually increased 60 times in the last year. So as we talk a lot about all these figures, it's not just about the main platforms. See, all of the platforms that are being accessed through mobile devices. Some people may have seen Mary Meeker's annual Internet Trends report that was released last month, I believe, and it paints a picture of a very, very mobile future. So here on the screen is mobile usage over the last kind of 3 years, and the mobile revolution really has been fast, cheap, and effective, and is changing both how and how much people consume content. And as this slide shows, it's also far from over. Expect that upward curve you see there on the screen to keep rising all the way up to 100%. Today it stands at about 30% mobile penetration globally.
By the way, Dan, that's a great slide from Mary Meeker, State of the Internet, that I really kindly recommend. This is a great presentation that they always prepare with all this data. Amazing.
It's a fantastic report, and there's a lot of good data in there. This is just one slide from about 80 slides, so I do recommend the audience you go and download Mary Meeker's annual Internet Trends report. Something of a culture thing in the industry, as we all go and wait for that report to be released every year. And there's some fantastic stats, especially about mobile in there. So I do recommend to the audience to go and download that report and give it a read. So how do we adapt? Obviously, there's a lot of information there, a lot of stats around mobile, and it's obviously mobile is significant. Exactly why the audience is on the call today. But for ourselves, for SMEs, how do we kind of take that all into account? And mobile devices are fast becoming the preferred method of reading, sharing, and engaging with online content. It's strange to think that the content we create on desktops and laptops will end up on dozens of different screen sizes before all is said and done. But it really is imperative that we keep that in mind, and we keep in mind that mobile mindset when we're thinking about our mobile strategies, and especially our social media strategies. The way we consume content has actually changed dramatically over the years. So the last kind of 70 years, we've lived through years of movies, TV, presentation, white papers, research documents, really heavy work. And now we kind of live in, especially the last couple of years, we live in the kind of era of breaking news, bite-sized, kind of multi-screen content. So a completely different skill set for marketers when you're thinking about content marketing. Not that the heavy work, not that the white papers and the research document thing is dead, because there certainly is a space for that, and it works just fine, and is just fine, and is necessary, but it works fine in context. But it's not the only thing, and we really have to understand how our audiences are consuming content on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of the time, they consume that on the move. The world of marketing really has changed. How people consume information, what they consume, how they decide what to buy, has really undergone a revolution. And it's a noisy world out there, and people read different platforms differently. They interact with different platforms and various platforms in different ways, and captive audiences really are dead, and interruption advertising is annoying now. I think we've got to the stage now psychologically we block out those banner ads, we block out the interruption advertising, because we know what we're looking for on social. So for marketers, these trends really do have a huge impact, and it spawned a few new approaches, which hopefully I'll touch on today. But really the takeaway is we need to start respecting platforms, not just the social networks, but we need to understand the psychology of the people behind the platforms. Posting exactly the same thing on Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter is not going to work. We really have to understand the psychology of how people consume information, where they consume it. People are using social media on the bus to work, on the train home. There's a stat which was released earlier in the year to say 31% of people actually check social media before they get out of bed, which is incredible stat. I'll put my hand up. Unfortunately, that is I am one of those in that figure. My alarm goes off in the morning on my phone. I lean over to turn my alarm off, and all my Facebook and Twitter notifications are on my phone. So I turn the alarm off and I read through those notifications. There's no other marketing channel that allows you to interact with people's daily lives the same way social media does, and social media on mobile devices. You probably heard the stat that you're never more than a meter away from your mobile phone, and that really is truly the case. So actually thinking about this and thinking about how people consume it on the move, Facebook understand that, and actually Facebook recently, I don't know if you've read in the news, I think Wednesday this week, they released their Save for Later feature on the platform, or Save on Facebook, I believe it's called. Here's a couple of screenshots of it. Basically what it effectively allows you to do is bookmark items such as links, places, movies, TV, music, and read that at a later date, so it saves it in Facebook. The majority of my time surfing social media is done on the move, on the way to work and from work, on the train, on the bus. So I'll often find that I'll come across links or articles that I just don't have the time to read. So actually this is a really handy feature. On the left hand side you can see there's an article by the New York Times. Click on the menu, you can save it for later and read it later. And this really has, again, come about from the psychology and the way that people consume information. They're doing that in bite-sized chunks, and they don't have time to read long-form content. So this is a way for Facebook to allow you to kind of save that content and then pick that up at a later date. And this also has an impact on how you market that content and how you utilize that content, and hopefully will have an impact on your engagement rates, because now people can revisit and come back to content where historically it's been difficult to find an article again once you've seen it once, purely because of the way Facebook algorithm works. So we see the way kind of the content is consumed has changed. So that kind of leads me into kind of my 3 tips, as it were. So my first really tip is to take a mobile mindset to everything that you do. When you're through content marketing, through social marketing, and then through social advertising. Social advertising really was the first step, and obviously a lot of people now, especially with the popularity of Facebook and Twitter ads, have considered mobile in that. But actually just content marketing and social marketing from the basic standpoint really needs to be visited from a mobile mindset. So if you take content marketing, the create stage, the first stage, when developing content, think about how it looks on mobile first. People don't have the time to read paragraphs of copy, and Facebook obviously minimizes posts longer than approximately 200 characters, and adds a read more button. People don't have time to click that read more button. There was an article released, I think by Share This, a report released, to say that the optimal character for a Facebook post, character limit for a Facebook post is 80. It's 80 characters, so that's less than a tweet effectively. And then they're seeing that the most engaged posts are posts with 80 characters or less. So again, lending itself to how people consume that information. So make sure the content looks good on mobile before you post it. Think about the copy length, and also think about the links that you're clicking, that you're adding to those. So see the way people use social media, if they're clicking through to a link, it needs to be visiting a mobile-friendly page. So if you're clicking through to your own website or to your own content, you need to make sure that content on the other end of the click-through is mobile optimized. If you don't have a responsive site, and I'm sure a lot of the talks this week have talked about responsive web design, if you don't have a responsive site, then you need to make sure at least the information that they're looking to read and the other end is available and easily viewable on a mobile screen, both mobile and tablets. Then as we go to kind of social marketing and you think about distributing content, think about how you target that content and how you make sure that the content is relevant to the audience that's reading it at the other end. So I touch upon this in tip 2, but you mentioned, Marco, about targeting geographically, targeting those content, and you can do that both through Twitter and Facebook and other platforms. So make sure actually you're delivering content relevant to the end user. And then when you measure and report as well, really dig into the reports. See, if you've got Google Analytics on your site, Google Analytics will give you all the data you'll ever need to know about the end user and their mobile activity, down to the device and the operating system that they're using. So really use that data that you've got to understand how your specific audiences are interacting with you. So if your Google Analytics is saying that 95% of your audiences are visiting through mobile devices, visiting through iPhones, this is probably similar to the case of that audience looking at your social content. So actually you need to be testing and making sure your content works on iPhones, and then it'll probably give you, no doubt, other information about the tablets they use, etc. Then understand the time of days that your audience is engaging with you. So Facebook and platform and Twitter and other social networks you can post our content across the day and actually really use the reports and the insights to look at when your audience is most engaged with you. And then probably you'll probably see a lot of running trends. The trend is like 8 till 10 in the morning is a high engagement period where people are on their way to work or have just got to work and don't want to start just quite yet, and they're checking social media. Lunchtime, 12 to 2 is always a peak period. We see people on their lunches checking social on their mobiles. And last year, actually, it used to, when I was back in my agency days, looking at our clients' content, we were seeing that a lot of content was getting good engagement around the 4 to 5 period when people were ending work. But we're actually seeing a shift in that trend now, and we're seeing peaks around 9:30 to 11:30 at night. So it's clear that people now are checking content social less, getting home, having dinner, sitting on their sofa, and then jumping on their tablets, then jumping on their mobiles when they've got time, and they're consuming content then. But obviously these are just assumptions based on other people's data, so really use the data and the insights you've got to understand when your audiences are engaging with you and how they're engaging with you and what devices, so you can really develop content aligned with that. Use the data to inform the decisions you're making with your content strategy.
Sure. Dan, sorry, what about the weekend? A few years ago, the idea was that during the weekend, basically, a website, if you were checking your Google Analytics traffic, that was your traffic, and then in the weekend, boom, always down, and then Monday start again.
Yeah.
Do you see any difference? I mean, because still on desktop, I see this trend. In weekend, especially during the summer, boom, it goes down. But do you see on mobile any trend based on data that you have?
Similar trends, but what we use, so actually we get the majority of our engagement during weekdays, and that is again down to psychology of how people use that. Actually, more people are more active and doing their own thing on weekends, so they're not looking at social or websites as much. We are seeing actually the spikes correlating throughout the week. So I mentioned our kind of key time periods. We see the 9:30 to 11:30 p.m. We still see a similar trend throughout the week. So actually, we don't see a huge dip during those periods. But again, it's all based off of your own individual insights. And actually, I can make a number of assumptions based on other brands and businesses' content. But actually, we have the power in our hands now. Facebook has an insights platform. Twitter does as well. And Hootsuite, if you're using Hootsuite, has a reporting and analytics tool that allows you to look at all this data, integrate Google Analytics. If you're using Enterprise, integrate Pinterest Analytics, really integrate all of those analytics into one dashboard and use the data to kind of inform yourself and make those decisions aligned with that data.
Got it. Interesting.
So kind of as we look at the content, and obviously this is the kind of content process that we follow when we develop that technology. The platforms and even the content really are a means to an end for the end user, and that end is effectively their peers, their friends, their family. People are on the platforms because of their peers, effectively, and like I mentioned, the platform, the technology itself, really is a means to an end. So actually understanding this and understanding the psychology behind why people both use the platforms, but also why they would ultimately want to share your content is really, really valuable. So see, if I'm a user and I'm on Facebook and I'm looking to share content, the majority of people on my Facebook are my friends and my family. So I'm going to share content that I feel resonates with them and adds value to my friends and family. And normally that's content that entertains me or inspires me, rather less about the kind of social media marketing or thought leadership pieces. I'm less likely to share that on Facebook. Whereas actually if I'm looking at Twitter or LinkedIn, the majority of people that follow me and that I follow are my peers and my colleagues. So actually I'm less likely to share content that entertains, because actually entertainment is something is personal, and actually is something I might find funny, my followers and fans might not. My followers and peers might not. So actually I'm going to share a lot of the thought leadership pieces and maybe some of the long form content on Twitter and LinkedIn. So it goes down to really understanding, again, the nuances behind each platform and really understanding why people would share on those platforms and the psychology behind sharing. So if I'm posting a lot of long form content about Hootsuite, I'm less likely to post all of that on Facebook, and the majority of that is going to go onto our LinkedIn subgroups, actually on LinkedIn groups, because I know a lot of our thought leadership communities are there, and that's where I'm going to get the most engagement. So really understand that. Share This actually performed a study of 2.4 million websites, I think, examining more than 6 billion social signals, and the overall conclusion that they come to, one liner, that was that the mobile web is twice as social as desktop. So actually people share twice as much on mobile devices in general than desktop, and that trend's not going anywhere else. So if you look at those stats, as I mentioned, mobile users here, if you look at the stat here, mobile users are nearly twice as likely to share content on social network as desktop users. So as a percentage of total online activity, this is sharing. Sharing on desktop accounts for 4.1% of their activity overall. And then actually, if you look at mobile, that's double the figure. So actually nearly 8% of all online activity on mobiles is sharing, or is related to sharing content. Now this number gets even greater for iPhone users, who share actually 3 times the level. So share this same report actually displayed that iPhone users share 3 times more likely to share content via their iPhone than their desktop. And 1.5 times more likely than all other mobile devices. And actually iPads were in this as well. And iPads were twice more likely to share on iPads. So some interesting stats around sharing. Very much the usability, very much kind of reinforcing how people consume content on the move. It's very easy within 2 clicks to share a bit of content on a mobile device, and actually there's less thought that goes into that, so you can click straight through and share that on mobile devices.
And then you think they share more on iPhone or on Apple platforms because the usability is just better and it's easier to share, or you see any other reason for it?
One of the reasons, we were looking into this and having a discussion internally, and actually personally I'm actually an Android fan. I haven't owned an iPhone for
me too.
So unfortunately I wasn't able to do a like-for-like test. But I do know when I was talking to some of the guys in the office here and the team here, actually we were testing those clicks, and sharing is 2 clicks away on iPhone. And actually, if you go through the desktop browser on the Android, it's a little bit more. So their usability is a factor, but actually, just overall, it's certainly not a stat to ignore. Mobile sharing in general is overtaking and will continue to succeed against desktop sharing. And then if we just look at some sharing stats again across other platforms. Users on mobile are actually more likely to retweet, so 66% more likely to retweet your content on mobile than desktop. 39% of Facebook content is more engaging when it's shared through mobile devices, and Pinterest content is shared nearly 3 times more often on mobile devices. So again, it kind of lends itself to the content that you're producing on mobile, making sure it's shareable. So my next step kind of lends itself into social metadata and understanding how content is shared and how platforms themselves share the content. Because if you understand the technology behind that, you can really start to get to grips with how you can improve your own content when you're sharing. And a lot of that data is through social metadata. So if anyone is undertaking SEO and SCM, kind of search engine optimization strategies, you know that a lot of SEO work is based around tagging and making sure you effectively meta tagged and tags all of your content on your website. Effectively, there's also things which you might not have heard of called social meta tags for each of the platforms. So Facebook has Open Graph, which is their own type of meta tag. Pinterest has rich pins. Twitter has product cards, which I'll go into a little bit more detail. But really, you should strive to include these social media meta tags in all pieces of new content on your website, because what that will effectively do is when a user picks up that content on your website and shares it through their personal channels, it will take the metadata with it and share additional data, effectively increasing the chances of click-through with stronger call to actions, increasing the real estate on a page as well. So I'll give some examples of that in a bit. But what this allows us to do is optimize for sharing on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, Pinterest, by defining exactly how titles, descriptions, images, and more appear in social streams. So the right data, including optimized images and videos, really helps content to spread and also be shared, which often, of course, leads to increased links, increased mentions, increased shares. Think of it as conversion rate optimization for social exposure. effectively you're increasing your conversion rates of your social content. In its basic form, the implications for SEO using these are very significant. Obviously, the search engines themselves are looking for this metadata and including all of this data in their ranking algorithms. However, taking our mobile mindset into account, social meta tags also allow you to include more content and stronger call to actions in your messages. So I'll explain actually. So Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, and Pinterest have different social meta tags. So I recommend you search for this. I haven't got it on the slide, but SEO Moz have a great article on all the different social meta tags that you can use in those. So you've probably heard of Twitter cards. So this is a type of meta tag for Twitter. So effectively, you may have seen various tweets around them having this additional content. So on the left-hand side, there's an example of just a summary card from a link. So you may be able to see where the Romney battles Obama and beer brawl title is. If you don't add any metadata to your website, if anyone takes that web page and shares that web page from your website, they'll normally just see the text and the link as above that title. But if you include the metadata on your web page, when someone shares that content, we'll also share the content below. So the titles, the content there, and also the additional handle, which you can change at the bottom, so you can have the duplicate double handles kind of posted within those. So obviously, again, taking that mobile mindset into account, more real estate on the page, takes up half the screen rather than a smaller screen, more difficult to miss, but also adds more context to the post itself. On the right-hand side is an image post. So it's an image where, as normally you might just attach that image in. On the website, National Geographic website, they've added social metadata to the back end. So it's added an additional title down below and some more copy and an additional handle. So again, more real estate, more context to that tweet. I put a link in here, www.dev.twitter.com/docs/cards. That's got all the information about Twitter cards that you'll need.
So basically, Twitter cards are piece of content that are richer than the traditional tweet when you retweet or when you share it.
Exactly that. So it gives additional content to that tweet. So whenever anyone shares a link, if that link is to a piece of content on your website, and that piece of content on your website has these social meta tags, it will pull that additional content and share it in the tweet that they've shared out. So this is not specifically for the content that you're sharing, your business is sharing, or your brand is sharing through your own profiles. This is very much about how other people share content and consume content, because actually when they share it, they'll pull through similar information. And these are summary cards as well. Sorry, these are player cards that I'm just showing on the screen here. So within the player cards is another great way of grabbing attention. Works very well on mobile devices, but as you can see, pulls through more content. So the link here on the set, you can pull through SoundCloud and audio files, so people can play those audio files directly from their apps, from Twitter on mobile, rather than having to click through to a link. Great for audio content. And on the right hand side, a summary slide of a SlideShare document, so people can actually flick through the SlideShare document on their device rather than having to click through to a third-party website, in this instance SlideShare, to pull that content. Again, adding more relevance, more context to that. So they've got all the information there, and it's not 2-3 clicks away. The information is right in front of you. I've also spoken about Facebook and Pinterest, so they offer similar things. Both Facebook and Pinterest offer social metadata, slightly different in the way that you tag information on your web page. But effectively, on the right-hand side, the top there is an example of someone sharing a recent BuzzFeed article. Obviously, BuzzFeed do this very well and tag all of their content. But that is actually a friend of mine sharing another friend's bit of content. It's gone 2 or 3 people down the line, but actually it's still pulling through the imagery, it's pulling through the title, the associated copy, and the link and the author. So you can see you can add additional content, often up to about 200 extra characters in the description, enticing readers to click through and click more. So if you can imagine that without the image and without the link, here's what London tube lines would look like if they were people. Really doesn't really give me much of an incentive to click through, but actually now there's a bit of entertainment to that with the imagery, and hopefully will improve click-through rates. So that's an example of Facebook Open Graph. And then ones that are Pinterest, actually meta tags that not many people use. But actually, Pinterest recently, I read an article yesterday when I was looking at this presentation that said Pinterest sharing has actually now overtaken. Sorry, Pinterest usage, mobile usage, has overtaken Twitter usage in the US, 21% versus 18%. So actually, Pinterest is growing and growing. It's not one to turn your nose up, and they've also got social meta tags to add more info. So this example here is actually a pin of a image of a cake, a cheesecake. I've had to cut that off just because we see the size on the slide. But below that was the information on the pin that I had when I looked on it on my Android. And it actually gives you all the ingredients and all the information you need to make that cheesecake. So not only was the recipe, the image, but also more metadata, more context, and actually all of the recipe information. And Pinterest have a number of meta tags that you can add. So not just additional information, but product cards. So you can put pricing and click-throughs directly to your store, live pricing on each of the pins of products. So now when your products are shared through Pinterest, actually the pricing information, the product information will be shared with that image along. So obviously brilliant for adding additional context. Again, brilliant for adding stronger call to actions and driving your click-through rates.
Then what catch my attention of this later thing is why are you checking cheesecake recipe on Pinterest?
No.
That's the real question of the presentation.
Well, I'm a cook at heart. I like to cook, and I couldn't help but click on the link to blueberry cheesecake. Sounds fantastic. So I did click through and see that, but unfortunately I do use actually the recipes quite a lot on Pinterest. And actually, if you do have the Pinterest app on your mobile phone, I recommend you actually just dive in quickly, go to the recipe section and search for any recipe of any meal, and you'll see all of this rich data, this pin data in those. And you can imagine that for products if you're in retail, for additional information on the service you offer if you're B2B. So you can imagine it in various scenarios, and very powerful. So the key takeaway from this is really see every post as a golden opportunity. See every post in your content, not just your advertising content, but in your organic content, as a way to connect to more and more people, and see it as an opportunity to really drive context and drive relevant information to that end user, and make sure all the time you're in that mobile mindset when you're developing content. This is another tip. As I mentioned, we go on to the next tip: location-based content targeting. So kind of what I mean, as we touched upon this, Marco, earlier, what I mean by that is not kind of location-based marketing, Foursquare, Yelp, Swarm. We were talking about those platforms 12, 24 months ago, but really looking how you deliver relevant content to a specific geographic location. So when I post to social media, increasingly I'll be seeing tweets, especially in my feed where I follow hundreds of kind of 3,000, 4,000 people. Obviously, tweets that are really not relevant, and actually tweets that are multilingual, because I do follow, especially for Hootsuite, people and influencers in different countries, especially when they dip in and out of different languages. But the physical and digital worlds really are converging. So as a result, consumers expect kind of a uniform service and expect to receive content that's relevant to them at the end of the day. So this is especially relevant if you are an SME and you're looking to expand into other countries and looking kind of multilingual. You don't really want to be distributing content or creating, profiles for each of those languages and having to repeat content and distribute them across multiple profiles. So both Twitter and Facebook, the two most popular profiles here in the UK and across Europe, or the majority of Europe, sorry, not all of Europe, have options to geo-target organic content. So I've got an example of doing this through Hootsuite. So this is my Hootsuite dashboard, and this example, for those of you that use Hootsuite, you'll recognize this is the publisher window for publishing content. And for those that don't use Hootsuite, in the background of my streams, but at the top here is my publisher window. So on the left-hand side, I can select the profiles that I want to post out to effectively. And then on the right-hand side, I create my content. But as you can see, there's a little map, a globe that I've highlighted, icon on the right-hand side. And what Twitter effectively allows you to do natively, but also through platforms, social relationship platforms like Hootsuite, is target by country. So you hit the nail on the head, Marco, earlier with really you can start to deliver content relevant to individual countries, and break that down country by country on Twitter, and be multilingual and really drive relevant content. But also, as we go to Facebook, Facebook actually offers one step further down the line. It actually allows you to target, as you can see here on the right hand side, by city. So I've just set up a city-specific post, and actually selected it to be posted only to people in Croydon, or who say they're in Croydon. And effectively, what Twitter does is target your content by your follower bio. Your bio, personal bio, whatever location you put in there. But Facebook also does that by IP, so you can pull that by IP. So it's the top I've selected here, UK. Selected Croydon, and now I can start to deliver really relevant content to each individual. So, for instance, as an example, I might on Valentine's, on the right-hand side, sorry, just if I step back, I can then break down by age, gender, interested in relationship and education, as you can see. So really start to kind of break down who I'm targeting my organic content. As an example, Valentine's Day, I might have a male and female offer. So I can target the content. I can target one piece of content to males specifically, one piece of content to females, post them out at the same time, but I might only be able to deliver to London. So actually I only want that content or that item that I'm advertising to go out to people that live in London, because I can only deliver there. Whereas actually I might have other items that I can deliver to other cities or regionally or internationally. So then I can start to break that content down and actually send organic posts to individual cities if I can only deliver my product there, or if I've got informational services that I only offer to my local my local area. So if I was, for instance, a consultant, as an SME, a one-man band, or a small consultant, I might be based in Glasgow, for example, and I can only deliver my services to the audience in Glasgow. So actually, I might just want to deliver content directly to them. So you can see how you can start to be much more relevant with regards to how you target content, and you can do this very much so on the social advertising platforms, but increasingly so now. You should really start to understand how you can do that through organic content and drive that relevancy and kind of hyper-local activity to that. And the point is really from that, really what we want to do is, we've got to the stage now where we're in a kind of 24/7 content churn machine. So there's a lot of noise out there at the moment, and marketing is changing to respond to the connected consumer, to the mobile consumer. Kind of pull marketing, inbound marketing, marketing automation is changing. No longer are we interrupting people because they're ignoring you. If you're pushing out ads, as I mentioned earlier, we're now naturally tuned to kind of push out some of those ads, especially those banner ads. So you need to make it easy for the right people to find you. So that's where I go down to making sure the content is relevant. You're thinking about the mobile mindset, but you're also distributing content to the right people, which is why I spoke about kind of geo-targeting content. And to help them with the discovery process, to entertain them and provide useful content and make it easy for them to share, to attract them and not interrupt them. We've moved away from interruptive advertising. Kind of captive audiences are now dead, so we really need to attract those. And shifting to a publishing content that you can really tell stories with and understand how the platforms can help you do that. And then finally, my last tip really end on is your audience use mobile. So do you, as SMEs, as the one-man band, all the way up to the small team, up to the 10, 20-man shop. Obviously, time is a commodity for everyone. We're constantly, as SMEs, you're constantly trying to see how you can make the most of your time. Time is extremely valuable, and social was often left to last because it is time-consuming. So obviously, as they're mobile, really think about the platforms that you use to manage them. So Hootsuite Mobile Suite. We have a whole suite of mobile apps across iPad, across Android, across BlackBerry, any mobile devices that you use. And really they allow you to manage multiple networks on the go, schedule content, get complete analytics, and really utilize your time. So the way that I talked about people consuming content are on the move, and the way consumption has changed. Actually, the way we manage content and the way we manage our platforms and marketing has now also evolved along with that. As an SME, we need to be thinking about how ourselves are better utilizing our time to manage those, because it's no longer if or when you should use social or mobile. It's how you should be using those. So you really need to be utilizing platforms and the technology around you to support. And just some screenshots of our app around how you can use that and how that looks through those, and our dashboards allow you to kind of manage all of that content exactly the same way you would through the dashboard, the web dashboard, effectively. So really think about how you're utilizing your own time. And they're my 3 tips for today.
Very good, Dan. You're always full of interesting tips and useful tips. I was really attracted, and then I go straight to Krista to see what kind of questions she has got for you. But my question is a little bit clarification about the geo-targeting and Facebook that you were talking about, which is much deeper, I would say, than the Twitter geo-targeting.
Indeed.
So you basically really can target, like when you use Facebook advertising in the end, but with your organic status updates.
Yeah, that is exactly that. So you can really target down onto a granular level, and there's only so much I can kind of try and explain in a couple of slides. So I do recommend that our audiences go through and look at the Facebook organic targeting options that are available, and there's some great resources out there that kind of explain that in detail. But effectively there's different types of targeting, but you can target by location, geographic, and you can break down some demographic items as well, so gender and age. And there's 2 different types of targeting as well. So if I just quickly scoot back to the slide just to give you indication. Actually, the way Facebook splits out their organic targeting is page targeting and newsfeed targeting. So actually, if I can try and explain this, on the left-hand side here, you can see the targeting. I've got UK and Croydon. So that's geographic targeting, and that will actually geographic target on the page itself. So anyone that goes to your page, if they're going to this post that I've just posted and they're from Croydon and they access my page, they will see that content on the page. If they are not from Croydon, they won't see the content when they visit the page. On the right-hand side here, however, the demographic breakdown, the age and the gender and the relationship, that is actually also newsfeed targeting. So what that means is any content that's published in my personal newsfeed when I go on, will take that into account as well. So if I take the Valentine's example, if I'm posting one out to male and one out to female, that male that logs in will see my post here in their newsfeed, in their personal newsfeed, and the female will do too. But actually, when I actually visit the page itself, Facebook doesn't take that into account. It only takes in the geographic targeting, so both of those individuals will see both posts on my page. So actually, just to give you a bit of background, there is some nuances to how the targeting works. So if you're looking at targeting organic content, I do recommend you go out and read some of the resources and understand how that breakdown kind of works when you're targeting organically, but it is a very powerful tool.
Got it. Well, one question. I see many companies posting and reposting the same content during the day several times. So for instance, they maybe write something, and then after a few hours they write the same content again, because the idea is that on mobile I just go like that, I scroll, I don't have time, and maybe I lose your kind of update, but then if I find it back, 3 hours later, maybe I catch it up. Yeah. I don't know if it's a good practice or not, but I just see a little bit of trend on this, and I wanted your opinion.
Yeah, so there's a fine balance, right? So there's a fine balance of trying to kind of use the system, understand the system, and understand, like I mentioned, the psychology behind how people use the platforms, and trying to get that content in front of them as many times as possible. And there's also a balance between spamming effectively, because obviously you run the risk of spamming, annoying the audience, annoying your end consumer, and eventually they'll click ignore or unfollow you. And it goes back down to kind of understanding how the platforms work. So on Facebook, see, we always look at the life cycle of a piece of content, and it's probably approximately about 2 to 3 days. So the Facebook algorithm tries to work out content that's most valuable to you, and will when you log in, will show that content based on a number of factors and elements. So actually, you might see a bit of content that was posted 2 days ago when you log in, but it actually is still relevant. It's a page that you visited many times, and Facebook thinks it's valuable to you, so we'll show it to you. So you've probably got 2 or 3 days as the algorithm tries to work out that content. Whereas Twitter, it's free for all, isn't it? So you get all of the content from everyone that you follow chronologically in order. So you probably have a life cycle of about 2 to 3 hours before they're never going to see that content again. So actually you do need to try and increase the frequency of posts. Whenever I look at our content, from my opinion, I never post the same thing across any platforms. I still wouldn't post the same bit of content across Facebook and Twitter. Again, you need to look at the individual platforms and why the end user would find that piece of content valuable. So it may not be worthwhile posting it on two. But if I am to post and replicate and duplicate content, I'll look at the copy and I'll look at how I position that and make sure actually I position it slightly differently. So if I'm putting out a key stat on an article, I might want to repost the article that I posted, but I'll post a different stat because actually the original stat might not have been relevant, but the new stat is. But it's the same article, just a new bit of content or copy. So I would always look at the copy that I'm using and making sure that I'm taking that end user into account. And when people are spamming and duplicating content, they're clearly not thinking about their audience on the other end and how they might see that if they see it multiple times.
Okay, that's interesting. So be careful with that, basically.
Yeah.
Krista.
Yeah, I mean, continuing along with this talk about, your organic content and getting it onto the people's news feeds, it seems to be increasingly hard, and I think for a small business who are thinking that they're going to make 1 post a day and going to try and put all their resources into making some cool content, and then their reach is maybe not exactly what they expected. What kind of tips can you give, like a small business, to crafting this type of content that is going to eventually gain momentum and start getting into the newsfeed of their followers?
Yeah, and actually that's becoming more and more difficult with organic content as the platforms kind of lend themselves more and more to the paid aspect of
right.
platform, and unfortunately 0 to 1,000 fans is the most difficult part of the journey, because actually you can't get that sharing and you can't get that organic. So actually the quickest way is to use the paid platforms, the promoted platforms that you have, and actually it's relatively inexpensive. You can target a group of people, 1,000 people, for probably less than £10 in the UK and really drive that content. What you've got to understand is when you're using those platforms, you really need to take time to understand how you're targeting that content and making sure you're targeting the right people at the right time, so you're making the most of your budget. But they are very powerful platforms. Facebook advertising and now Twitter advertising has opened up interest targeting and demographic targeting, so you become much more specific about how you use those and how you spend your budget. And 0 to 1,000 fans is the most difficult part, and really to get that initial boost, it is relatively expensive, and I would recommend using the paid platforms. If you don't want to use those, really think about the influence you get from other people's reach. So I would always look at potential advocates of your business or your brand, either partners that might have a social following or current customers and clients that have a social following, and really look at ways that you can leverage each other's communities or you can leverage their communities. So maybe looking at partnerships for content, co-branded content that you both might want to utilize, influencer campaigns to get them on board sharing your content and getting visibility for you, and really empowering your team as well. So if you're an SME with a small team, a non-profit maybe with a team of advocates and volunteers, there really is significant value in empowering your team to share that content. So it's very difficult to post out. For instance, take an example of someone who's just started a Twitter profile and has 150 fans. You would post out and you would get max reach about 150. In reality, probably 10 to 15, probably 10% of those people will see that. But then if you have a team of 5, for instance, 5 either directly in your team or advocates or volunteers, if you get them to post out the exact same content, on average a user has 111 Facebook friends and 125 Twitter followers. That's 230 approximately. Times that by 5, you've already got over 1,000 reach just by empowering your team. So you can see the kind of the power in getting your team and your advocates to help you distribute content and not really just focusing on individual platforms and trying to grow them, because that is the most difficult part of the journey.
I love it, Dan, because this could be a very quick tip to immediately have kind of have a good reach. If you have 10 employees, say, hey guys, every time we post something, just help us sharing, and in this way you have an audience that is immediately bigger. So that could be. Well, one question then. About frequency, I was curious about that. What kind of frequency do you recommend? I mean, tweeting twice a day, 10 times a day, 100 times a day. What's the best practice here?
It's always difficult, isn't it? It's always a difficult question, because actually you'll see a lot of articles around saying that actually, as I mentioned, the life cycle of a bit of content on Facebook is probably 2 to 3 days. So you need to be posting at least once every 2 to 3 days to have a chance of your fans seeing that. And on Twitter, 2 to 3 hours. So you need to be posting every 2 to 3 hours. But really, it goes back to my point around understanding your audience. First of all, when they're most engaged, so you can make the most of those time zones. So if you have significant engagement at 4 times in the day, 9 a.m., 12 p.m. at lunch, 6:30 and 9:30, there's 4 tweets that you can post out, and you know that you're going to drive some good visibility and engagement on those. And then also you need to look at kind of the value of that content. So it also goes back down to spamming, as you mentioned earlier, people producing the same bit of content over and over again. If you have good content that's valuable to your audience, they want to read that, they want to see that. And by good content and by value, I mean anything that inspires, anything that educates or entertains. If you can really deliver that content regularly, something like Twitter really doesn't have a limit. Like you'll see people tweeting kind of every 30 seconds at an event. People actually want to see what's going on at those events. We'll see tweets every hour. If that content is valuable, people will come back and consume that. But at a bare minimum, I'd always say look at those. Look at the content you have 2 to 3 times a day. You are looking at daily. If anyone is questioning that on Twitter, you do really need to be looking at daily content to give a reason for your audience to come back. And then on Facebook, it may be once every 2 or 3 days, really. It'll based on the volume of content, the value you can provide, and how much engagement you get from your audience.
Very good. Dan, we are arrived at the end. As usually, you were super useful, so thank you very much. Thank you very much to Krista McLanders, Apps Builder, and is just SME's Mobile Strategies ends up here. I hope, guys, you all got good tips, good takeaways, and what to say. Well, what's happened next? I'll start with Krista. What's the next plan? Well, the next step for Apps Builder after the holidays, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, the next step for I think a lot of our audience is obviously putting a lot of these tips in action. Us here at Apps Builder, we're here always helping small medium businesses really start getting their mobile presence launched. So we're just going to continue doing that. Keep fighting the good fight type of thing, as they say.
Very good, very good. And what about you then? Are you planning any holiday with your scheduled function of Hootsuite that will mask that you'll be in Caribbean probably, but every day right tweet, right updates are coming out?
Yes, yeah. So you continue to follow Hootsuite for all of our updates. We've got a couple of big events. Myself personally, I haven't got any holiday booked this year, so nothing exciting for me. But we've got a couple of exciting things for Hootsuite and events coming up throughout the year. So if you want to meet us next, if you're in the German market, we're at De Mexico, the big marketing expo in Germany in September, and we're at a couple of other events throughout the year. So keep checking back, keep following Hootsuite_UK for our official updates.
Fantastic. Dan, thank you so much. Krista, thank you so much. And thank you so much to all the people following this online event, and good luck for everything. Bye-bye. Ciao.